And unfortunately, Hitler, the fella, used to think that places like Sheffield should get bombed because they were producing things that could be used against him. And the thing that's always stuck out in my mind is the day or night that he decided he'd pay us a visit. It was early on in the war. The war started in '39. And in 1940, I think it was the 12th, 13th, it sticks out, the night of, he decided he would pay us a visit. But we were all prepared in those days for this, because every night we had little visits from the odd aircraft and dropped a few bombs and gone away. So we always had a basket provided by your mum with sandwiches and flasks and etc. that was always stood in the front room, whereby the front door led into the little front garden where was the old standard Anderson shelter, which was very comfortable because my dad, being an old soldier, had made sure it was comfortable. We'd got bunks. It was built up at the front like a First War dugout, so there were no blasts to come inside or anything. And usually, without fail, at 7 o'clock at night, the old sirens would go, so we all used to troop in. Now, my grandma lived next door but one, and she used to come along with her basket, so we got plenty of grub, plenty of books. The lighting wasn't very good. It was usually little paraffin lamps. But the thing was, we felt safe. 7 o'clock that night was no different to any other. We just trooped in the shelter. But what we didn't really reckon on was he would come in that night with his Luftwaffe, and he meant it. We lived halfway up a hill in the suburbs, Hillsborough. And if we stood on our front garden, we were like at the top of a valley, and on one side, the left-hand side, was the Shire Cliff and all the Shire Green estates, and on the other side, you were going out into Derbyshire. Well, on that side at the top of the hill, you got a rocket battery. And on this side, going out to Stannington, you got a heavy anti-aircraft battery, 4.5s. Well, when they went off, you didn't need bombs to drop because your windows fell out anyway. And when the old rockets went off at the other side, the whoosh was terrific. You had to put your fingers over your ears. But anyway, that was the night it all happened. And this went on for hours, the steady drone of aircraft. Unfortunately, at that time of war, we hadn't got an excess of night fighters, so it was up to the old anti-aircraft lads. And when we stood in front of our area shelter, I can vividly remember this, looking out over my city. There was one huge orange glow. I've never forgotten it. It was as though the whole city was on fire. Actually, it was. And we were looking in the suburbs. Some suburbs got some really, really bad. Well, we got one dropped in our place near the park, and somebody said it was a landmine which used to drop by parachute, so I was informed. And Hawksley Avenue, which I delivered on later in my life as a postman, was quite a long road full of old Victorian houses. Well, this landmine wiped out half a street in the blink of an eye. It had gone. Our local cinema had lost its roof, the shops had gone, the tram cars were stood in the high street, the wires were down. The morning after, it was a complete disaster. You looked around and wondered, how the hell have we survived this? And while you were watching all this going on during the night, my old dad was stood there outside in front. Because I suppose at the end of the day we're used to the sound. We'd been in France, we used to stand smoking his pipe upside down. Because he used to say, well, if my pipe's going to glow, they're not going to see it up there, he used to say, which I thought were funny actually. But what you didn't realise when all this was going off, it was just something that was terrible to look at. You didn't realise at the time how many people were dying in all that lot. And the morning after in Sheffield, it was just a shambles. And we thought that was bad enough. But he hadn't actually lit our steelworks. He came back again at Sunday. And it was a beautiful moonlight night, so we had the same procedure, but this time they followed the old River Don, and the East End, which was full of steelworks, and rows of little houses, was completely flattened. So we had a right old, it never looked the same after that. And actually, if you go around Sheffield these days and look around, if you knew what happened that night, you can still see these scars here and there, and they still stand out. And I'm afraid it's a memory that I shall never ever forget, because to be in the middle of that lot, it was just terribly shocking.